Welcome back to the deep dive. I was driving in today, stuck in a bit of traffic, and I found myself just staring at the bumper sticker on the car in front of me.
Okay.
It was nothing special, just a generic university sticker, but it sent me down this whole rabbit hole of thought.
The traffic jam epiphanies. They're the most dangerous kind.
Right. I started thinking about the very specific feeling you get when you've been doing something for a long, long time. I mean, maybe it's a language you started learning 3 years ago, or maybe it's your actual career path, or I don't know, even just the way you navigate the dating world. You do it every day. You're not a beginner anymore. You know the ropes. You're good. You're competent.
You're functional. You can operate the machinery of your life without reading the manual anymore. You know which buttons to press.
Exactly. Functional. That's the perfect word. But then there's this creeping realization that hits you, maybe on a random Tuesday, maybe while you're staring at a bumper sticker, that you aren't exceptional. You're good, but you aren't great. And worse, you feel like there's this massive invisible wall standing between good enough and mastery, and you have absolutely no idea where the door is.
That is the plateau. And honestly, it is one of the most psychologically dangerous places to live as a human being.
Dangerous? Why dangerous? It sounds kind of comfortable.
Because it's comfortable enough that you can stay there forever just coasting. But it's frustrating enough to slowly eat away at your satisfaction. It's that feeling of spinning your wheels in the mud. You're burning gas, making a lot of noise, but the speedometer isn't moving.
That is the perfect image. Spinning your wheels! Well, that is exactly what we are declaring war on today. We are looking at how to scale that wall. We have pulled together this just massive stack of research, high-level language guides, comparative economic analysis, sociological breakdowns that act as a sort of toolkit for the modern adult.
We are going deep today. This isn't surface-level stuff.
We really are. The mission is simple.
Yeah.
We want to move you from basic competence to nuanced mastery across 3 major pillars of your life.
Okay, let's lay them out.
First, we're tackling communication, specifically looking at the C1 threshold in English and why knowing more words just isn't the answer.
A very common trap.
Second, we're looking at your career, breaking down the psychology of the entrepreneur versus the employee. Are you a builder or a maintainer?
What a huge question.
And finally, we're looking at connection, dissecting the messy, fluid, and often confusing landscape of 21st century relationships.
And as I was going through this stack of sources you sent over, I realized there is a really fascinating thread that ties these 3 seemingly different topics together.
What's that?
It's the death of black and white thinking.
The end of simple rules.
Exactly. When you are a beginner in language, in business, in love, you crave rules. You want to know, do this, don't do that. You want to color inside the lines because, let's be honest, you're terrified of making a mistake.
Of course. You don't know the landscape yet. You need a map.
But mastery doesn't happen inside the lines. Mastery happens in the gray areas. It happens in the exceptions, the subtle negotiations, the complex emotional intelligence required to handle things when the rules completely break down.
I love that. The gray area as the zone of genius. So for our listener today, the learner, as we like to call you, this is your roadmap to those gray areas. We want to help you refine your skills, avoid the burnout of just, endless information overload, and actually get some transformative insights.
You have a lot of ground to cover. We've got linguistics, economic theory, and sociology on the docket. It's a heavy hitter.
So let's dive right in. Pillar 1, mastering advanced communication. Specifically, that thing you mentioned, the C1 threshold. Now, for the listeners who maybe haven't looked at a language textbook since high school, or who maybe speak English as a second language and just feel stuck, give us the lay of the land. What are we even talking about here?
Okay, so broadly speaking, language proficiency is broken down into these levels from the CEFR framework A, B, and C. A is beginner. You're in survival mode. Where's the bathroom? How much is this?
Taurus level.
Right. Then B is intermediate. You can have a conversation. You can watch a movie with subtitles. You can do your job pretty well. And statistically, most people, most adult learners, get stuck at B2.
B2 is the plateau.
B2 is the plateau. It is quicksand. You are fluent enough to survive, so the urgency is gone. But you miss the jokes, you miss the cultural references, and you really struggle to express complex emotions or opinions without sounding blunt.
And then there's C1, the promised land.
C1 is advanced. It is what the sources call the threshold of effectiveness. It's where you stop translating in your head and you actually start thinking in the language. But here is the critical distinction, the big insight our sources make. Reaching C1 is not about vocabulary size.
Say that again. I think that's so important.
It is not about memorizing the dictionary.
I think that is such a common misconception. People think if I just learn 500 more obscure nouns, or if I finally learn the word for spatula or photosynthesis, then suddenly I'll be fluent.
Exactly. It's what one linguist called the collector's fallacy. You're just collecting items, but you don't know how to build anything with them. But the research is clear. C1 isn't about breadth. It's about nuance.
Okay, nuance. Unpack that.
It's about navigating unpredictable, messy, high-stakes situations. It's about diplomacy. It's about being able to handle a conflict at work without sounding like a toddler or, a robot.
The source provided this really compelling example of a dialogue to illustrate this. It's a scene between two coworkers, Alex and Maria, and they aren't talking about where the printer is or the weather.
No, this is the real stuff. They are discussing a pretty thorny ethical dilemma at work.
Right, let's set the scene. So Alex is floating this idea of maybe bending the truth on a quarterly report, just fudging the numbers a little bit to make the team look better. It's a classic corporate gray area.
It's a total gray area. So imagine you're a B2 learner, someone who is competent. How do you respond to Alex? Probably search for the most direct words you know. You might say, "No, Alex, that is bad. We cannot do that. It is a lie."
Which, grammatically, that's a perfect sentence. Subject, verb, object, it's correct.
It is grammatically pristine,
Yeah.
but socially. In a nuanced office environment where you have to work with Alex tomorrow, it's a complete disaster.
Why? It's the truth.
Because it's blunt, it's aggressive, it lacks any and all tact, and it probably shuts down the conversation and maybe the relationship right there. It sounds like a parent scolding a child. It's judgmental.
Okay, so you've made Alex defensive and you haven't actually solved the problem. So how does Maria, our C1 speaker, handle it?
She leans in. She doesn't create distance. She creates connection first. She says something like, "That's a tough call. I definitely believe in transparency, but I see where you're coming from regarding the competitive strategy. However, I think the long-term risk might outweigh the short-term reward here."
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that. That's a tough call. That is such a specific, small phrase. It's not a big vocabulary word.
It is, but it's doing so much heavy lifting. By saying, "That's a tough call," she validates Alex's struggle. She acknowledges the situation as difficult. She's saying, "I see you. I hear the pressure you're under." She isn't judging him immediately.
And then that next part? I see where you're coming from.
The magic phrase.
I use that all the time. It's basically the polite code for, I understand your logic, even though I think you're completely wrong.
Precisely. It's a linguistic tool for de-escalation. She is separating the person from the bad idea. In advanced communication, you aren't just exchanging raw data. You are managing the relationship. You are managing the ego of the person across from you. If you can't do that, you aren't truly fluent, no matter how many words for kitchen utensils you know.
So it's about emotional intelligence expressed through language. The source also listed other phrases in this category. Things like, "Let's agree to disagree," or "If I were in your shoes, I might feel the same way," or even, "That's a fair point." These are all empathy markers, right?
They are. And notice, none of these are big words. Shoes is a beginner word. Call is a beginner word. Point is a beginner word. But using them in that specific idiomatic structure, that is advanced. That is C1.
So the takeaway here for the listener is if you want to sound advanced, you have to stop focusing on just simple agreement or disagreement.
Stop thinking in binary.
You need to start focusing on how to express complexity. How do you soften a blow? How do you challenge an idea without insulting the person who had it? That is where the C1 level really lives.
It makes you sound less like a translation machine and more like a human being who's actually thinking and feeling and reacting in real time.
So if that's the goal, this nuanced diplomatic communication, how do we actually build the vocabulary to support it? Because the source material was, it was pretty adamant about one thing: depth over breadth.
Yes. Stop learning new words. Start learning the words you already know better.
I love that idea. This brings us to a term, collocations. I hadn't heard this since my college linguistics class, but the second I read it in the source, it made so much sense. Break it down for us.
The collocation is just a fancy term for the company that words keep. It's about word partnerships. Native speakers have these statistical probabilities wired into their brains of which words naturally go together. It's not a grammar rule, it's just habit. It's what sounds right.
Give me a concrete example.
Okay, take the word disappointment. You know what it means. But if you want to describe a really, really big disappointment, what adjective do you use?
I'd probably say a big disappointment or a huge disappointment, maybe a major disappointment.
which is fine. It's B2. You will be understood. But a native speaker, or a highly advanced C1 speaker, has a specific collocation locked and loaded in their brain. They would instinctively say, a bitter disappointment.
Bitter, right, like the taste. It adds that emotional flavor.
It does. Or think about coffee. You want a coffee with a lot of caffeine. You don't say a powerful coffee, even though powerful means strong. You say strong coffee.
If someone ordered a powerful coffee, I would understand, but it would sound strange.
It sounds slightly off. You sound like you're trying too hard, or like you're translating directly from another language where maybe the word for strong and powerful is the same. It creates a tiny bit of friction for the listener.
It's like the uncanny valley of speech. It's close to human, but just different enough to be unsettling.
That's a perfect analogy. It's like wearing a suit that fits perfectly versus one that's just a size too big. Both cover your body, but one looks sharp and professional and the other looks sloppy and a bit off. Mastering collocations is how you get that tailored fit for your language.
The other aspect of this depth concept that the source really highlighted was connotation. This is the emotional baggage that a word carries, right?
Oh, this is huge, especially for business and professional settings. The source used the classic comparison of cheap versus inexpensive.
Oh, I know this one. If I tell a client their product looks cheap, I am probably getting fired.
You've just insulted their quality, their craftsmanship, their brand. Cheap implies low value, breakable, shoddy, maybe made of bad plastic.
Right, but inexpensive.
Inexpensive implies smart, efficient, good value, cost-effective. The dictionary definition is almost identical, low cost, but the emotional impact is diametrically opposite.
Or think about describing a person. The source used stubborn versus determined.
Yes, you're so stubborn is an insult. It means you won't listen to reason, you're closed-minded. You're so determined is a huge compliment. It means you have grit, you don't give up.
Same behavior, different frame.
Completely. And if you don't understand these shades of gray, you are walking through a social minefield blindfolded. You might think you're complimenting your boss's determination, but you accidentally call them stubborn. That's a bad day at the office.
Okay, so to avoid these landmines and build this mental map, the source suggests something called thematic clusters, which I guess is a fancy way of saying don't learn random words.
Stop learning from alphabetized lists. It's a worse way to learn. Instead, you learn a web of related concepts. The example they gave was for business and innovation.
Right. So don't just learn the word change. That's a B1 word. It's too broad.
Exactly. Learn disruptive innovation. Learn a scalable model. Learn market saturation. And most importantly, you have to contextualize them.
What do you mean by contextualize? Just using them in a sentence?
More than that. Don't just memorize the definition of disruptive innovation. Link it in your brain to a story. Link it to Uber. Uber didn't just change the taxi market, they disrupted it. They fundamentally broke the existing model and replaced it with a new one.
Okay, so you have a mental hook.
You have a hook. Link scalability to software. Why is it easier to sell 1 million copies of an app than 1 million handmade tables? Because the app is scalable. You build it once. When you link the word to the specific concept or story, you can retrieve it so much faster in a real conversation. It sticks.
It turns your vocabulary from a pile of loose bricks into an actual building structure. Everything connects to something else.
That's the idea.
Now, speaking of retrieving words fast, let's talk about the physical act of speaking, the mechanics of it. The source got really technical here with something called shadowing. Have you ever actually tried this?
I have, actually. I use this myself when I'm trying to brush up on my French. And let me tell you, for the first few minutes, it is surprisingly exhausting. It's a real workout for your brain.
Okay, so walk us through it. How do you do it? What's the process?
The idea is to listen to a native speaker, maybe a podcast host, a news anchor, someone whose voice and cadence you like, and you repeat exactly what they say, but just a split second behind them. You're trying to be their live echo.
So you aren't pausing the audio after every sentence and then repeating?
No, that's the key difference. That's just mimicry. This is different. You keep the audio rolling. You have to listen to the next word while you are speaking the current word.
That sounds incredibly difficult. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head at the same time, but with words?
It is at first. Your brain feels like it's short-circuiting.
So why do it? What's the benefit of that specific difficult exercise?
Because it forces you to stop thinking about individual words and start feeling the melody of the language. English, specifically, is a stress-timed language. We have a rhythm. We speed up on unimportant words and slow down and emphasize the important ones. We swallow vowels. We link words together. If you just read a textbook, you never ever learn that music.
Right. You sound robotic.
You sound robotic.
Uh-huh.
Shadowing forces you to mimic the music, the intonation, the rhythm. It's training your mouth and your ear at the same time.
It's like learning a song. You can't just read the lyrics. You have to know where the high notes are, where the pauses are. And this connects to the other point, connected speech, right? The way we just smash words together in casual conversation.
What I want to do.
What I want to, exactly. If you were reading that, it would be, what do you want to do? 6 distinct words. No one says that.
No one, ever. And if a listener is waiting to hear each of those 6 words clearly pronounced, they're going to get hopelessly lost in a real conversation. They'll still be processing what while the speaker's already 3 sentences ahead.
So shadowing trains your ear to hear what I wanna, not as noise, but as one meaningful chunk of sound.
Exactly. It's pattern recognition.
The source recommends some pretty hardcore input for this, too. They said don't listen to learning English podcasts where everyone speaks very slowly.
It's a crutch. It's helpful at the A2 level, but it will hold you back if you want to reach C1.
They said listen to the daily, listen to hardcore history, listen to Freakonomics.
Yes. Dan Carlin from Hardcore History is a fantastic example. He speaks with such dramatic rhythm. And then, in a move of shocking brutality, the Mongols arrived. If you can shadow Dan Carlin, you can handle a boardroom presentation.
That's a high bar.
It is. But you need input that is dense, complex, and real. You need to train in the flight simulator before you try to fly the actual plane.
I love that. Okay, let's touch on grammar before we move on to the next pillar, because let's be honest, grammar is usually the most boring part of learning a language. It just feels like a bunch of arbitrary rules you have to follow so you don't get arrested by the language police.
Right, it feels like a cage.
But the source calls this grammar as a style tool, and that framing really changed things for me.
This was a huge shift in perspective for me, too. Thinking of grammar not as constraints, but as a paintbrush. It's about expression, not just correctness. The rules are your tools.
Give me an example of painting with grammar. What does that look like?
Okay, take something like mixed conditionals. This is a nightmare for B2 learners, but it is a superpower for C1 speakers. It's when you connect a past action or a past hypothetical to a present result.
Okay.
So if I had taken that job in London 5 years ago, it's a past condition, it didn't happen, I would be living in a different country right now.
Yeah.
That's the present result.
I see. It allows you to tell these alternative history stories about your own life.
It allows you to express regret or relief or to conduct a hypothetical analysis.
Yeah.
It adds so much narrative depth to your storytelling. It creates an entire arc across time in one single sentence. It's incredibly sophisticated.
Or what about inversion for emphasis? I love this one. Instead of saying, I have never seen such a mess, you flip it.
You flip it for drama. Never have I seen such a mess. It's theatrical. It adds flair. It commands attention. It signals that what you're about to say is important.
It's spotlight.
It's a grammatical spotlight. And then there is the secret weapon of corporate and academic writing, nominalization.
That sounds very technical.
It's just a fancy word for turning verbs into nouns. You do it to sound more formal and objective.
Okay, give me an example.
So a simple active sentence would be, we decided to postpone the meeting because sales dropped. It's very clear who did what.
Right. We decided.
Now let's nominalize it. The decision to postpone the meeting was made in light of the drop in sales.
Oh, I see what you did there. You took we decided, which focuses on the people, on us, and turned it into the decision, which is this abstract, impersonal thing.
Exactly. It removes the personal agency. It shifts the focus from the doer to the event. It sounds more formal, more detached. We failed to launch the product becomes the failure of the launch was due to market conditions. It softens the blame.
That is high-level nuance. It's almost a form of, I don't know, linguistic maneuvering.
It is, and it's crucial for high-level professional writing and speaking.
It's fascinating how these little structural tweaks can change the entire vibe of what you're saying. But okay, knowing all this is one thing, actually doing it is another. The source laid out a C1 daily routine, and honestly, it looks intense.
It is, but fluency is a discipline. It's not magic. It's reps.
So what's on the schedule?
The routine they suggest is 15 minutes of reading news aloud. Again, aloud is key for the muscle memory of your mouth.
Right, not just in your head.
Never just in your head. Then 10 minutes of vocabulary notebook work, reviewing those collocations and connotations we talked about, 20 minutes of shadowing a challenging podcast.
The Dan Carlin workout.
The Dan Carlin workout.
Yeah.
Then 15 minutes of writing or journaling where you actively try to use these new structures and then edit yourself ruthlessly. And finally, 15 minutes of speaking practice, even if it's just to yourself, describing your day.
That's about an hour and 15 minutes a day. That's a commitment. But the main takeaway for me was the consistency. You can't just cram this on a Sunday night for 5 hours and then do nothing the rest of the week.
No. Language fluency is about building and strengthening neural pathways. It's about literally rewiring your brain. That takes a daily pulse. It's far better to do 20 minutes every single day than 5 hours once a week.
It's like going to the gym for your brain.
It is exactly that.
So we've mastered how to speak. We've got the nuance, we've got the diplomacy. Now let's talk about where we are using that voice. Let's move to pillar 2, the career crossroads.
This is a perfect transition from the how to the what. Our source material here analyzes this massive dilemma of the entrepreneur versus the employee, and it frames it not just as a job choice, which is too simple, but as a total lifestyle design.
I think everyone listening has had that moment, probably on a Sunday evening, with that feeling of dread about Monday morning where they think, should I just quit? Should I start that bakery I've always dreamed of? Should I launch that consulting firm?
The I want to be my own boss fantasy. It's such a powerful narrative in our culture, especially now.
It is. But the source breaks this down into what they call the great comparison. It's like a matrix of 4 key factors: risk, income, time, and freedom. Let's start with the first one, the big one, risk.
This is the barrier to entry, right? In entrepreneurship, the risk is, for lack of a better word, existential. You are often investing your own personal capital. You are putting your life savings on the line.
Or taking out second mortgage.
Exactly. If the business fails, you don't just lose your job. You might lose your house. You take the hit personally. There's no separation.
Whereas in traditional employment, the risk is contained.
You have the corporate shield. If the company has a bad quarter or a bad year, you might get a smaller bonus, or worst case scenario, you get laid off. And getting laid off is terrible. I'm not minimizing that. But you aren't personally liable for the company's debts. You don't have creditors chasing you personally. The risk is capped.
Okay, factor 2, income. This is the big allure of the startup life, isn't it? The dream of unlimited potential.
It is. It's the lottery ticket logic. We look at the outliers, the Bezoses and the Musks of the world, and think, that could be me. The ceiling is theoretically infinite.
But the source has a great phrase for the reality: initial poverty.
Yes, you might be eating ramen noodles for 3 years before you even think about buying the Ferrari.
Yeah.
As the founder, you are the last person to get paid.
Okay.
You pay your staff, your rent, your suppliers, and then if there's anything left, maybe you take a tiny salary.
Whereas with employment, you have a fixed, predictable salary. You know exactly what is going to hit your bank account on the 1st and the 15th of the month.
It's certainty. But, as you said before, there is a ceiling.
A hard ceiling.
Right. You can only get so many raises. You can only get promoted so far. You are trading that unlimited potential for predictable certainty.
And then there's time. I feel like this is where the fantasy of entrepreneurship really crashes into the brick wall of reality. People think, I want to be my own boss so I can work whenever I want.
Huh. And you can. You get to choose which 18 hours of the day you work. The source calls this the always-on culture. When it's your business, it's your baby. You can't just turn it off at 5:00 p.m. and forget about it. If the server crashes at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, you are awake and you are fixing it. If a client is unhappy on Thanksgiving Day, you are on the phone.
Well, the employee, at least in a healthy company culture, can clock out. They have the luxury of what psychologists call psychological detachment.
Yes. You can go home, watch Netflix, and not think about that spreadsheet until 9 a.m. tomorrow. That is a mental luxury, a form of freedom that founders simply do not have, especially in the early years.
So it all comes down to that last factor, freedom and responsibility. Total creative control sounds amazing.
It does.
Until you realize it also means total blame if things go wrong. There's no one else to point to.
That is the ownership concept our source discusses. And it's a critical distinction. Are you working on the asset or are you working for the asset?
Explain.
The entrepreneur is building something that is theirs. They're working on it to grow its value. The employee is maintaining something that belongs to someone else. They work for it. This requires a fundamental mindset shift.
Let's talk about that mindset. The source distinguishes between the visionary and the task-oriented.
Right. The visionary, that's the classic entrepreneur, has to be comfortable with the unknown. They have to be comfortable with chaos. They see possibilities where other people just see problems. They have to possess an incredibly high tolerance for ambiguity.
So if you're a person who needs to know exactly what is going to happen next month to sleep at night,
Entrepreneurship will absolutely destroy you. The uncertainty will eat you alive.
and the task-oriented employee, what's their profile?
They value efficiency, they value structure, and they excel at being a team player within a defined role. They want to know the rules of the game so they can play it well and win. Neither of these is better, but they're profoundly different psychological profiles. Self-awareness here is absolutely key.
I liked the vocabulary section here too. Some of these terms are just crucial for modern professionals to understand about themselves. Autonomy, for instance.
Autonomy is about valuing self-governance over having a set schedule. If autonomy is your highest personal value, you will likely be miserable in a traditional corporate hierarchy where you have to ask for permission to take a lunch break or go to a doctor's appointment.
Scalability. We hear this buzzword all the time in the startup world.
It's critical. And the source defines it really simply. Can you grow without breaking? If you are a consultant and you're trading your hours for dollars, your business is not scalable. You only have 24 hours in a day, you will hit a hard ceiling on your income.
But if you sell a product,
If you sell software or a book or a digital course, selling 10,000 copies is just as easy as selling 10. That is scalability. That is where the real wealth is generated. And if you're thinking of starting a business, you have to ask yourself, is this idea scalable? Or am I just creating a new, more stressful job for myself?
a very important question. And the phrase wearing many hats,
The reality of the founder. You are the CEO, yes, but you are also the janitor, the marketing department, the head of sales, and the accountant. You have to be willing to do the unglamorous work, especially at the beginning.
the source included this great little case study dialogue between two friends, Emma and Liam. I found this so relatable. Liam is the risk-taking founder of a creative agency.
He's taking the plunge, as the idiom goes.
Right, he took the plunge. And Emma is his friend who values the stability and the benefits of her corporate job.
And Liam is the perfect archetype. He's risk on. He's excited about his vision, but he's also stressed out of his mind about making payroll next week. And Emma, his friend who stayed in the big company, she has health insurance, she has weekends off, she has a 401k match, but she feels a little bit bored, a little stifled.
And you can feel them looking at each other with a kind of envy. Liam looks at Emma and thinks, God, it must be so nice to sleep through the night and not worry about cash flow.
And Emma looks at Liam and thinks, it must be amazing to be so free and to be building your own dream instead of someone else's.
The grass is always greener.
It always is. But the insight from the source here is that neither of them is wrong. Liam isn't right for leaving the rat race, and Emma isn't boring for staying. It depends entirely on what currency you, as a person, value more, security or freedom. You just have to decide which currency you want to pay with, because you can't have 100% of both.
Taking the plunge. That was the idiom used for Liam. It really does feel like jumping off a cliff and hoping you can build a plane on the way down.
It does. And for some people, that adrenaline is fuel. For others, it's completely paralyzing. Knowing whether you are a cliff jumper or a bridge builder is probably the most important piece of career advice you could ever get.
So we've figured out how to speak C1 English, and we've decided whether to be a boss or an employee. Now let's get to the really messy stuff. The stuff that keeps us up at night for entirely different reasons. Part 3, the landscape of modern relationships.
The third pillar, connection. And just like the workplace and the way we use language, the entire landscape of love and partnership has fundamentally changed in the 21st century.
The source talks about a huge shift from rigid scripts to fluidity and flexibility. What does that mean?
Well, think about the mid-20th century, say the 1950s. The script for a relationship was pretty much written before you were even born. You meet someone in your hometown, probably at church or school, you court, you get engaged, you marry young. The man is the provider, the woman is the homemaker. It was restrictive, yes, absolutely. But it was clear. Everyone knew the rules of the game.
And today, the script is gone, we've thrown it out, we are improvising.
We are all improvising. We are moving toward what the sociologists and our sources call negotiated roles and egalitarianism.
Which means that roles in the relationship are based on skill and preference, not on gender stereotypes.
Exactly. If the woman in a heterosexual couple is the better financial planner, she handles the investments. If the man is the better cook, he runs the kitchen. It sounds obvious and normal to us now, but historically, this is a massive disruption of a thousands-year-old model.
But it requires so much more communication.
Constant communication. You can't just default to tradition. You have to talk about everything. Who does the laundry? who plans vacations, who handles childcare logistics. It all has to be negotiated.
The source also mentions this concept of active choice, moving away from the idea of destiny or finding your soulmate.
And moving toward compatibility and building together. It mirrors the career shift, doesn't it?
How so?
We aren't waiting for the perfect job to be handed to us. We are told to build our own career. And in the same way, we are waiting for a soulmate to magically appear and complete us. We are now taught to actively construct a partnership with someone compatible. We used to believe in the one. Now, the modern belief is in the one I choose to build with.
That's a huge psychological shift. But we have to talk about the tool we're using to find these people to build with: technology. The source has a lot to say about the double-edged sword of dating apps.
Oh, absolutely. On one side, you have what they call the broadening. The apps allow you to meet people you never, ever would have crossed paths with in your daily life. People with niche interests from different social circles, different backgrounds. It can break you out of your bubble.
That's the upside. But then there is the dark side.
The very dark side. First, you have swipe culture, which leads to the paradox of choice.
Is that the jam experiment? Where if you offer people 3 types of jam, they buy one, but if you offer them 24 types, they get overwhelmed and buy nothing.
It's exactly that, but with human beings.
Huh.
When you have an infinite scroll of 500 potential partners in your pocket, no single person feels special or important. It creates a feeling that people are disposable.
If this date isn't 100% perfect, if they chew their food too loudly, swipe left.
Yeah, exactly. It creates a perpetual restlessness, a feeling that someone slightly better is always just one more swipe away.
And this leads to these new, pretty awful behaviors, like ghosting.
The phenomenon of just disappearing without any explanation. It's a direct byproduct of that digital distance. Because we meet online, we often don't share a social circle. If I ghost you, my mom isn't going to see your mom at the grocery store and ask why I was so rude.
There are no social consequences.
None. So it's easier to just stop replying than to have a difficult but mature conversation that says, hey, I had a nice time, but I don't see a future for us.
And then there's catfishing, creating entire fake identities for the purpose of manipulation. It's wild that we live in a time where we had to invent a specific word for that.
It speaks to the anonymity of the internet. Trust is just harder to build now when you don't know if the person you're talking to is real. But alongside these risks, we have this whole new vocabulary for new types of relationship dynamics.
Like the situationship. I feel like I hear this word everywhere now.
It's the ultimate gray area. It's that ambiguous middle ground. You're more than friends. You're probably sleeping together. You're hanging out all the time. But you aren't official. You haven't had the talk.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, the sources say it can be freeing if you want something with low stakes, or if you're focusing on your career, don't have time for a full commitment. But more often than not, it's anxiety-inducing.
Because the rules aren't defined.
And humans hate uncertainty. If you don't know where you stand with someone, you can't relax. You're always wondering, are we a couple? Can I call you my boyfriend? Are you seeing other people? It's exhausting.
And then there's the even more complex stuff like ethical non-monogamy. The source breaks this down into open relationships versus polyamory. What's the difference?
This is a crucial distinction. Open relationships usually refers to a couple, often a primary couple, who have given each other mutual consent to have sexual relationships outside of their partnership. The focus is primarily on the sexual aspect.
Okay. And polyamory?
Polyamory is different. That is about having multiple, loving, emotional, committed relationships simultaneously with the full knowledge and consent of everyone involved.
It challenges the very core of the traditional one true love narrative that we've all been raised on.
It completely dismantles it. It posits that love isn't a finite resource like a pie, where if I give you a slice, I have less for someone else. It posits that love is infinite and can be shared. But my God, the communication skills required for successful polyamory.
It must be off the charts.
It's C2 level communication. You need incredible emotional transparency, time management, and the ability to manage jealousy and scheduling. It is not for the faint of heart.
And a simpler one, cohabitation. Just living together without being married.
It's now a standard step for most couples, or in many cases, a permanent alternative to marriage.
Mm-hmm.
The piece of paper is becoming less defining than the shared address and the shared life.
The final piece of this relationship puzzle that the sources highlight is the global factor, the rise of cross-cultural relationships.
Right. Globalization isn't just about supply chains. It's about our love lives. We are falling in love with people from different countries and different backgrounds more than ever before. This is beautiful, but it brings a very specific set of challenges. the clash of values.
The source uses a term for the skill required here: intercultural communication competence.
It's a mouthful, but it basically means the ability to navigate and respect different cultural norms without judgment. For example, if your partner comes from a high-context culture, like Japan, where communication is very subtle and indirect.
And you come from a low-context culture like the US or Germany, where you say exactly what you mean very directly.
You are going to fight a lot. You'll think they are being passive-aggressive and hiding their true feelings, and they'll think you are being rude, blunt, and aggressive.
So you're not even arguing about the same thing. You're arguing about communication styles.
Exactly. And assimilation, the difficulty of adapting to a partner's culture, food, family expectations, is a huge strain. Not to mention the language barrier. Trying to argue or express deep, profound love in your second language, it's incredibly frustrating. You can feel like a child.
It all comes back to communication, doesn't it? Which brings us completely full circle to part one.
It really does. Whether you are navigating the ambiguity of a situationship, negotiating equity in a startup, or trying to explain a complex feeling in a second language, the fundamental requirement is exactly the same.
Active engagement.
And adaptability. In all three of these areas, communication, career, connection, we are seeing the death of the default setting. There is no longer a pre-installed program to run.
You can't just rely on the default grammar rules you learned in school. You need nuance. You can't rely on the default 9-to-5 career path. You need to choose your own risk profile.
And you can't rely on the default marriage script from your parents' generation. You need to negotiate your own roles and your own definition of partnership.
So what does this all mean? It means we are moving away from those black and white rules toward those gray areas we talked about right at the beginning.
That is the synthesis. The modern world, in all its complexity, demands that you become comfortable in the gray. You have to stop looking for the right answer and start looking for the effective path for you.
I want to leave our listeners with this final provocation from the source material. It was about relationships, but as we've been talking, I think it applies to everything. The quote was, "Relationships are less about finding the right person and more about becoming the right person."
That's profound. And you're right, it maps perfectly. If we apply that to careers, success isn't about finding the perfect job that's magically waiting for you out there somewhere. It's about becoming the person with the skills, whether they're entrepreneurial or professional, to succeed in whatever you choose.
And for language, fluency isn't about finding the perfect word in a dictionary. It's about becoming the kind of person who can navigate the real, messy flow of a conversation, who can handle the tough calls and the gray areas with grace.
It shifts the locus of control entirely back to you. You aren't a passive recipient waiting for the world to align for you. You are an active participant, aligning yourself to handle the world as it is.
So here's our call to action for you, the learner. As you go about your week, identify which mindset you are currently operating in. In your career, are you a visionary or are you structured? In your relationships, are you active or are you passive?
And look at that C1 daily routine, the reading aloud, the shadowing, the journaling. Pick one, just one of those habits.
Steal it for your own life. Start small.
Start scaling that wall, one brick at a time.
Exactly. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
It's a pleasure. A great conversation.
We'll see you next time.